guest today is Jocelyn Wright, founder and managing partner of the Ascension group outside of Philadelphia. Jocelyn is a certified financial planner and a champion for diversity in financial services. She's also a special advisor on gender diversity for the CFP Board's Center for Financial Planning. Jocelyn, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Awesome. So, what led you to a career in financial services?
So, I've always been interested in money since I was young. So, a child of the 70s, grew up on board games. And so then Monopoly, Life, all of those were games that I enjoyed playing and loved being the banker. So for a large portion of my childhood, I thought I was going to go into banking because I love counting money. My father had businesses that were largely cash-based. So I enjoyed when he brought home the nightly receipts to be able to count the money, organize the money. So that was my thing. I loved counting money. And so going into college, undergrad, I majored in business administration, finance, thought I would get a job at, one of the banks, a big bank. However, my sophomore year, my father's mother, my grandmother, passed away. And then, she had one of those small debit life insurance policies. So, even in 1990, $5,000, that was not enough to, bury someone. So my father and his siblings, his two sisters, had to come up with the difference to cover, any costs associated with it. And being from the South, we had a service in Philadelphia, and then her body was buried down South. So, there was cost associated with that. And it just occurred to me, why didn't we know that this was the case? Why didn't we know better? And ironically, the day that she passed, there was an insurance agent coming to the house to, I guess, look at her policy. However, at that age, it would have been extremely cost prohibitive to get any additional insurance. And that just, struck me as odd, how many families is this happening to? And that's when I made the transition from, wanting to be in banking to more of a personal finance type of career. And at that time, there wasn't an undergrad in financial planning that I could get. So, just continue through. And ultimately, my goal was to become a financial planner, which I am. So that's how it started.
That's a great story.
And I still love, counting money.
Well, breaking into the industry is one thing, but building a career and earning the reputation as a trusted advisor is really the tough part. Even more so, I would imagine, because we're underrepresented in our industry. What has your experience been in the financial services industry?
My experience is somewhat unusual because when I started after undergrad, I worked for several years and then went to grad school. And after grad school, I got a job at a large bank. So the objective was start with a large firm, still with the intent of starting my own business, but really start with a firm, kind of learn on their dime, get all of the education and expertise to start out, and then eventually start my own business. I did know that I wanted to start my own business, and largely because of my father having businesses. But, shortly thereafter, that was 2001, I was living in Houston at the time. 9/11 happened. Enron was happening, so it was not a good time to start. And I was laid off from that job at the big bank. And I wasn't ready to start my own business then. I hadn't saved up the money that I wanted to and all that, but life happens. But I was fortunately introduced to a woman who had her own financial planning firm, happened to be a Black woman who had a wonderful reputation in Houston. So I started off with a firm that was completely opposite to what the larger financial services industry with financial advisors looked like. Owned by a woman, more than 50% women at the firm, a lot, probably more than 50% diversity. So I was in kind of this I found the unicorn. And it wasn't until I left the firm after 5 years and moved back home to Philadelphia that I realized that there was such little diversity in the profession. Then I was sort of sheltered. I was cocooned because I didn't see anything. And because I was new in my profession, I wasn't doing a lot of networking outside of the firm, going to different meetings and events. So I was a little shocked. You go to, whether it's a business meeting or something, you're like, wow, I'm the only woman of color. So, eventually I got used to it, but it took some time before I realized how little diversity there was in the profession.
Yeah. And so today, I believe there's over 500,000 advisors in the US market, yet only 25,000 were from the Black community. And I believe that's down significantly since 2014. And less than 4% of CFPs identify as being Black or African American. This number is steadily declining at a time when I'd imagine that diversity and inclusion programs within financial institutions are really at an all-time high. In your opinion, what might be causing that trend?
So those numbers have changed slightly. So this is something, that I track every year. As soon as the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out the number, I'm updating my spreadsheet. So there was a dip in 2017, and, there's been an increase in 18 and 19. It's not huge, but it is. So, part of that, I think, certainly is this is can be a challenging profession. There are a lot of misconceptions about it, and it can be hard, especially if you're in a role where you're required to, you only can bring in a certain type of client, who maybe has a minimum amount of assets. And that can be challenging if you're working within your community. And so we know that there is a tremendous wealth gap. And so African Americans, Blacks do not have that same level of investable assets that the majority population does. So that can be a hindrance to someone building a practice. And if you don't have a natural network or connections to individuals, your career may be stymied from the beginning. And so one of the things that, it's a marathon, not a sprint, that I'm glad to see happening is there are growing number of organizations who have these diversity initiatives because they recognize that we need to have more diverse planners and advisors to serve the growing demographics and the changing demographics in the country. And specifically at the CFP board, while those numbers are are low, there is an effort to increase that. And so the change doesn't happen overnight, although I wish it had happened, last week or a year before. But there are efforts being made to do that. And I say I'm cautiously optimistic that, that we will get there. And I think the more that we work together, not just in our own silos, one company or organization doing something, but collectively, that we can begin to see a faster growth in those numbers. And certainly part of it is just getting the word out. There is still a lack of awareness of the profession, not just for Blacks and underrepresented groups, but overall there's a lack of awareness. So if you talk to a lot of individuals who enter the profession, many of them, they don't come in how I did, knowing that this is what I wanted to do. It is, a career change, or in some cases, a life event happening where, they had a loved one pass away, something like that happening later that they said, you know what? This is something that I want to do. So that is some of the reasons why those numbers are so low. There's a lack of awareness. And many times, we leave the business because we can't afford to stay in it, because we're in a position where you're compensated for the amount of your production versus, your expertise and knowledge of the area.
Got it. Yeah. What's for some of those companies that you mentioned are a little more progressive and are adopting more diversity and inclusivity efforts within their organization, what's the business case for increasing diversity and inclusion in financial services?
There has been a number of research studies. There are a number of research studies that show that a diverse workforce increases your bottom line. And so while I don't necessarily like to have to make the business case for it, because diversity is the right thing to do, but this is a business. So in many cases, that's how you get people's attention, is how does this impact the bottom line? And there have been research studies to show that more diverse teams and organizations have a better, an increased bottom line.
We talked a little bit about uncertainty of income. It's certainly a major factor discouraging not only Black advisors, but many underrepresented groups from entering the financial services profession. Can adjusting the compensation model have an impact on encouraging more Black advisors and minorities to enter the industry?
Absolutely. So as you said, it not only impacts Black advisors, we know that impacts women and younger advisors coming into the profession, because you want to have some certainty of, okay, I know I have bills. And if you think about it from a millennial standpoint, student loans that need to be paid. So that is very important, and that does make a difference. So there are companies who've looked at their compensation model and are making adjustments. So as opposed to bringing someone in on just a purely sales commission basis, they are now having programs where you come in with a salary. And in some cases, it might be for an extended period of time, or you're just salary based throughout. And that certainly helps, because if you think about it, we talk about the average age of a financial advisor. So if we're looking to get more millennials, more diverse populations, for someone who's in college and, you're excited about a job prospect, if you tell your parents, because, what's one of the first things your parents ask, well, how much are you going to make? And while, you've been, and I know when I first started, it was like, oh, you can make up, the sky's the limit. Yeah, that sounds good. But the limit is also the sky. So tell me how much, what is that number? I need to know, because I have bills to pay. So, parents are somewhat reluctant. And we've also seen where even some of the professors and counselors are reluctant to encourage children and the students to go into this field because of that uncertainty of income. So, having a set salary where people have a clear, this is what I'm making when I get my paycheck, is very important. And more companies are understanding that. And I think that also helps from the standpoint of looking at this career more as a profession. So if we get away from being compensated versus sales of products versus you're compensated for expertise and advice, then, that I think is helpful for the profession overall.
It sounds like you were the beneficiary of a great mentor when you first entered the industry. And I've read a little bit about, your advocacy on the importance of mentorship. How can mentorship play a role in this movement?
Definitely. I have been blessed with a number of wonderful mentors who have, gotten me to this point. And so I am an advocate of mentorship and its importance. Again, there have been studies, specifically the CFP board has done studies to show for women and for Black and Latinx advisors that mentorship is extremely important, because this is a tough profession anyway. Certainly when you're looking at it from the standpoint of, in many cases, you may be the only or just one of a handful, having a mentor to help guide you through some of those challenging moments is extremely important. And that can help, particularly when you have your times when you're on the ledge. You're thinking, I'm out. I can't I can't deal with this anymore. I'm tired of being the only one. It's too hard. It's, it's a struggle. Having a mentor to be able to, talk you through that and, guide you on the direction is very important. And I will say that in addition to having a mentor, there is also the importance of having an advocate or sponsor, someone who will not only be that listening ear, which a mentor is, but that sponsor who will, speak for you. They have a seat at the table and will speak and put your name up for whether it's promotions or expanded opportunities. And that is extremely important in one's career as well. I am an entrepreneur, so I don't necessarily have a sponsor, quote unquote, because I don't work for a firm. But in those cases where individuals work for firms, it is incredibly important to have a mentor as well as a sponsor, because they can make all the difference in the world in terms of your career growth and the opportunities that you get.
As a member of two underrepresented demographics, what message do you have for Black women who think this industry isn't for them?
I think it's a great time to be a financial advisor, financial planner. When I think back to when I first started, I didn't know much as far as the business was concerned. But when I see the changes that have happened over nearly 20 years, it's incredible. There is such a wide variety of how you can have a business, how you can be in this business. So, that creates opportunities because there's not just one way. You add on technology that has been a game changer as well. So if you want to, be in a profession where you can make an impact and really affect people's lives, this is certainly one. Building relationships, these are things that are, in many cases innate for women, the ability to build relationships and be nurturing. This is the profession that you can do that. So I encourage them, if this is something that you're interested in, find a mentor, reach out to me, talk to as many people as you can to find out, what business model might work best for you. You may have to try one or two before you get to your sweet spot, because that's something that I did. I went through several business models before I landed in my current situation. So ask questions, be curious, but certainly don't let some of the misconceptions that are out there, lead you to not look at the benefits of being a financial advisor and a financial planner.
Okay, Jocelyn, final thoughts.
Okay.
Are there any other types of change that you'd like to see in our industry?
That is definitely a loaded question. It's interesting because a friend reached out to me yesterday and she said, "How are you doing?" And I said, I responded and said, with all of this that's going on, the pandemic is already challenging. You add on the social and the racial unrest that's going on. Some days I just want to, do nothing and just sleep all day, just lay around and sleep all day. And then other days I want to, correct all the ills of the world. So, I ebb and flow. And, but I think if we can just create a profession and an environment where people are allowed to enter and thrive, regardless of their race, their sex, sexual orientation, or abilities, that it would not only be better for, it would be better for the profession overall. And ultimately it will be better for the consumer. And that at the end of the day is what we do for, is, how do we provide service and benefit to the consumer. So creating an environment where people are able to come in and enter and thrive is extremely important. And so kind of breaking down all of the isms that exist and barriers to entry and to being able to sustain and grow a practice. If they could go away, we'd all be better for it.
Well said, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.